national championship recap as Ohio State crushes. Yes, you heard me correctly. They crush Notre Dame, and the score doesn't show it, 34-23. We know Notre Dame makes a little bit of a comeback at the end. They're finally able to force a turnover, get themselves back into this game. And my predictions coming into this one were very, very simple. It was going to be a battle of defenses, which it was to an extent. I think Ohio State definitely took the cake there. Good quarterback battle that I think Will Howard absolutely won. An elite coaching matchup to where it felt like Ryan Day was the elite one here, and Marcus Freeman kind of, the moment's too big for him. Is he able to adjust? Notre Dame's able to survive the fourth quarter, but they give up a 21-point second quarter, and both teams had to establish the run. One did, the national champions, and one did not, the losers in the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Yes, 1,000 subs, baby. Thank you so much for jumping in the chat. I've been grinding to get here. 842 videos later, we are at 1,000 subs on YouTube. But let's get into the actual recap of this game. Like I said, those are kind of my predictions coming in. And, Notre Dame came out with a steady dose of Riley Leonard between his runs, kind of moving him outside of the pocket. But I saw it early on. Riley Leonard was staring down his receivers very badly, kind of struggling to go through his progressions. And Ohio State was going to pick up on that, and they eventually did. But we knew Ohio State's run defense was really going to be tested in this one early on. Notre Dame came out, chewed him up. 13 carries for 44 yards, 9 carries for Riley Leonard. Of course, he has a touchdown. They come out on an 18-play, 75-yard drive, chewing almost 10 minutes of clock. And that was really the recipe for Notre Dame to be able to win this football game. But they weren't able to keep that up all night. They had to keep Ohio State off the field, which they did not. And Ohio State comes out in this one quickly, and they're trailing for the first time all postseason. And when you look at the time of possession, yes, Ohio State does win it by 5 minutes, but it felt like they held the football much longer in this game. It's surprising that they lose the turnover battle and still come away with a dominant performance. Ohio State with 445 total yards of offense, over 200 yards rushing. And when you look at the fact that Notre Dame only had 53 rushing yards, they had 44 rushing yards on the first drive. Now, yes, the rushing yards do get taken away when you take sacks in college, and I think in the NFL that takes away from your net passing yards. So you're telling me Notre Dame came out and had 9 rushing yards through the final 50 minutes of that football game. That's exactly why they lost. They were not able to establish any sort of run game. And like I said in the predictions, the team who established the run dominated, and the team who wasn't able to had a very vanilla offense for most of this game were the losers. I thought Ohio State had a really elite defensive stand on Notre Dame's second drive, really adjusting, dropping 8 into coverage, getting pressure with 3, which is not easy. Ohio State controls that drive. They made adjustments, and they really locked it down on Notre Dame. And when you looked at how both teams scored, first and foremost, Notre Dame's drive looked difficult, very methodical. They didn't really march down the field, even though they did go down and score on the first drive, while Ohio State took half the time, and they marched down the field. They scored quickly in 5 minutes. And Will Howard just looked so confident in this game. Again, I feel like he gets better, week after week. Some people said he didn't look too great in the Texas game. And obviously in the Michigan game, the Nebraska game, it was a struggle as well. But he was delivering the ball, had some major scrambles, kind of channeling some inner Riley Leonard. And this Ohio State wide receiver room was really starting to heat up, whether it was Tate, whether it was Ibuka, whether it was Jeremiah Smith, who was already NFL ready. But, outside of a couple of stuff runs from Notre Dame, that Notre Dame defense didn't come to make anything difficult for Ohio State until they forced the turnover later in the game, which is what they needed to kind of get back into it. I hope my mic is not too low. For some reason, it likes to pop lower on the volume. Not like you guys can't hear me, right? It took Ohio State. Here's kind of the perspective of the game to show you how different the offenses and really the approaches were. It took Ohio State 1 minute longer on 2 total drives to score their first 2 touchdowns. Then it took Notre Dame to score 1. It took Ohio State 11 minutes to score twice. It took Notre Dame 9 minutes and 45 seconds and a heavy dose of Riley Leonard. He's going to the sideline, throwing up, trying to catch his breath after the first drive to score their first touchdown. And Notre Dame's offense had just died in this game after that. It was uncreative, 3 and outs. Ohio State caught on to it, and they weren't letting up. They were putting their foot on the throat, so it felt like, until Notre Dame got that turnover later in the game. I mean, with 2 minutes to go in the first half, Will Howard is 11 for 11, over 100 yards. He's got a touchdown. Notre Dame just couldn't keep up. And again, up until the point of when they scored forced the turnover, they are winless. Only loss was against NIU. Northern Illinois, when they don't force a turnover. And, this was really the game. If Ohio State was able to score before the half, they get the ball back after the half, they go up 21-7. It could have been possibly 17-7 if they kicked the field goal. That was just going to be a really tall task for Notre Dame. And then they made it 28-7. So it all but felt like the game was actually over. And all of these Ohio State wide receivers were pretty open for most of this game. And if not, a lot of the first half. Where the hell was that Notre Dame secondary? I really didn't understand where that Notre Dame defense was, because they did not come to play for majorities of this game. And they were outcoached. They were outplayed. Marcus Freeman's moment was too big for him. And I understand you had 7 wins against ranked AP opponents, but the Notre Dame secondary wasn't acting like that. Marcus Freeman wasn't acting like that. The Fighting Irish were not playing that brand of football. Will Howard continued to make great plays in this game, dropping it in the bucket to Henderson. Again, multiple scrambles, looking like Riley Leonard out there. You go into the first, you go into halftime. Notre Dame had 18 yards of offense. That's their first touchdown drive. Jeremiah Love had 3 carries for 1 yard. They were giving up 7 yards per play, allowing a 21-point second quarter touchdowns on all 3 drives. And they allowed Will Howard to have the highest first half CFP completion percentage in the history of the CFP. So it was kind of getting historically bad here for Notre Dame. Judkins seemed like he was going to ice the game on the second play of the second half. Now you had 4 drives, 4 touchdowns, and Ohio State just kept marching down the field quicker, easier, each and every drive. Notre Dame did not have any first downs since their first drive up until the point where they finally did get one in the third quarter. They went for 18 plays, 75 yards up until they were able to get early into the third quarter. They had 9 plays for 20 yards after that point. So Ohio State was just absolutely dominating, clearly looking like the best defense in the country, as we know that they've come to be. And you got to respect Ohio State's defense too. I mean, knowing that Riley Leonard is an absolute weapon, they're, just daring him to run. And Riley looked timid. He looked very uneasy in the pocket, having to make his reads. And respectfully, he's just not that type of quarterback. I understand he pulled it out at the end of the game and had some drives, but Ohio State was letting up. Ohio State's defense was starting to get a little tired from those longer drives that Notre Dame was able to be piecing together. Defense was kind of getting back out there quicker because Ohio State's offense was getting a little conservative. And, Notre Dame just looked desperate when they ran that fake punt. I mean, it was vanilla. It was just run game and defense. And both of those weren't even really operating at this point. Ohio State was pretty disciplined in this game as well. They had no flags on them until halfway through the third quarter. So that was very impressive. And, when you see this game playing out, Notre Dame clearly unleashed the entire playbook on the first drive, which is pretty sad to say because it wasn't an impressive first drive, even though they did go down and score. It took you almost 10 minutes. You had 9 rushes on an 18-play drive. No, you had 13 carries, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, you had 13 carries on an 18-play drive. So it's clear you're not trusting Riley Leonard to put the ball in the air, and that's okay. That's your identity. But Notre Dame fans need to accept that. People watching the sport need to understand that Riley Leonard is not a special quarterback. He's a great competitor, but he shrunk in this game. And I kind of saw it coming. I said also in the prediction, if you saw it, how can Notre Dame win the national championship? Riley Leonard has to be able to make more than just plays with his legs. And he wasn't set up for success for that. Now, he did start getting some passes going with Greathouse. Obviously, it was a real connection there that was becoming a problem for Ohio State. Greathouse able to score a couple of touchdowns, which was really great. But Notre Dame wasn't fooling anybody. It felt like there was nothing left, no creativity. Notre Dame fans just had to be sick at this point, knowing that they got all the way to the Natty, and it was going to play out this way. So, after, scoring the touchdown, Notre Dame gets that turnover that they so desperately needed. They get right back in the game. 158 points off turnovers is the most in the last decade in the sport. Riley's now kind of proving me wrong, converting on third down, converting on fourth down, throwing zone shots to get the team back in it. And Ohio State secondary had 3 flags on drives, really helping out Notre Dame. So you have to ask the question of, was Notre Dame really doing anything? I guess it's automatically adjusting down when I talking about my mic. Was Notre Dame really doing anything special? Or was it just the fact that Ohio State's defense was getting some flags on them later in the game? Again, the secondary with 3 flags on them. And when Notre Dame missed that field goal towards the end, now I'm thinking they have to touch the ball twice more without Ohio State scoring. If they would have scored the touchdown, it could have made it a 13-point game. If they would have hit the field goal, it would have made it a 13-point game, which means they got to get the ball back twice instead of once if you score the touchdown and hit the 2-point. It was a great way to stall out Ohio State as well. Notre Dame later on in this one, Riley Leonard delivering a strike for the score in the end zone, along with the Philly special for the 2-point. Just you really felt the momentum kind of coming over to them. And again, Ohio State let this one slip away a little bit. You guys heard it in my reel that I posted. they almost turned into the damn Atlanta Falcons. It was from 31-7 to 31-23, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, and then Ohio State gets the field goal to win it. They were too conservative with the lead. There were too many run plays, low percentage pass plays. Notre Dame just started to pin their ears back and adjust. I mean, there's quarterback keepers, and shout out Marcus Freeman for at least giving his team a little bit of a shot at the end. But the reason I say Notre Dame got crushed is because they did. It was too little, too late. This was a 31-7 game. This was a 21-point second quarter. They survived the first quarter, but they didn't survive the second quarter. Of course, Jeremiah Smith comes out, arguably the best wide receiver in college football, even though he's a freshman. He puts the game away on a 56-yard grab, and there you have your 2025 national champions in the Ohio State Buckeyes, and they absolutely deserved it. They were the best team in college football from the moment that they stepped into the playoffs, blowing out Tennessee, blowing out Oregon. I was trying to remember. They beat Oregon by as many as they did, Tennessee, Texas. They played Oregon again earlier in the season, and I'm trying to remember an exact tweet that I saw. Let me see if I can go back and find it, because I told the guy on Twitter to calm down a little bit. Let me see. I said slow down just a little bit. They were saying it was the most dominant season in college football history. I think I'm going to have it right here. Hold on. Here we go. Ohio State beat number 1 Oregon by 20, number 3 Texas by 14, number 3 Penn State by 7, number 5 Notre Dame by 11, number 5 Indiana by 23, and number 7 Tennessee by 25. Not the most dominant season in college football history. I still think 2019 LSU really is going to beat anybody like a drum, because that is the best college football team we've ever seen. But I'm giving all the credit to Ohio State. They're favored to win it all next year, and rightfully so they should be. Who's going to be the quarterback? We know that wide receiver room is going to come back. We know that running back room is possibly going to come back as well, barring that the transfer portal doesn't get crazy. And why would they want to transfer out? They just want it all. So shout out to Ryan Day for getting the monkey off of his back. Ohio State was the national champions when they first went to the CFP with the 4 teams. Now they are the first national champions when they expand the CFP to the 12 teams. And this is going to be a great team to watch for years to come. Expect them to be in much more national championships, because this program has reached the pinnacle. And nobody deserved it more than the Ohio State Buckeyes. They willed their way to this game, and it was never in doubt that once they beat Oregon, they were the best team left in college football. And I say that as a Bulldogs fan. As a delusional Bulldogs fan, I knew Ohio State, once they tapped Oregon, it was over. They destroyed the number 1 undefeated seed. It was over. And Ryan Day left out in nobody's mind, maybe a little bit, because of how they kind of slipped on the conservativeness in the game. But I just want to give some of my overall thoughts on the first ever 12-team format now that the college football season has officially concluded. First and foremost, best college football season ever. Without question. I watched probably 95% college this year and 5% NFL. And the name of my channel is the NFL with AJL. That doesn't mean that I wasn't tapped in on the league, the National Football League, but college football just kept me coming back to the screen. I mean, the home matchups, the fact that my team played the toughest schedule this year and still prevailed, the fact that Alabama had to go through some adjustments, the fact that Miami made it come around. We see Florida State fall off. We see Vanderbilt kind of making a push. And there's a lot of things that you could throw into this, but it was just so exciting overall. And I'm glad that it's here. I'm super glad that we get to experience this all over again next year. And some people are asking for adjustments, right? They want some adjustments made to the potential 12-team playoffs. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that because of everything that's been happening and just how great it was. I think the only adjustments I would possibly make was that the seeding needs to be fixed. Possibly seed the field as it is, because the reward for Oregon winning their conference championship, going undefeated, and getting the number 1 seed was facing the hardest side of the bracket. They were going to have to beat Clemson or Texas or Arizona State or Tennessee, or not Tennessee, or Ohio State. Like, they had the tough side of the bracket for sure. And that was their reward for going undefeated? No. You take the highest seed and they play the lowest seed. So you weed out the bad teams or the teams that just barely scraped in. That's kind of your penalty for just scraping into the playoffs, is you have to play the best. The reward for being the best is getting to play the lower seed. You save the best teams for later. So you don't have a Bills-Ravens divisional matchup or some of these other matchups we've seen in the NFL where they've gotten it right because of the seeding, but we get a game that we feel like should be possibly, Super Bowl worthy, championship, title championship game worthy. Talking about AFC championship, NFC championship. So I do think that they could fix the seeding, and home playoff games are so legit. I mean, I would love for it to go all the way through the playoffs at home like the NFL, and then obviously the very last game of the year is the national championship. I've seen a lot of people saying that the Rose Bowl should also be the national championship. I couldn't disagree more. I think the Rose Bowl being the granddaddy of them all, next year being the 112th game, is just absolutely special. I mean, it being out there in Pasadena, it is a privilege. It is an honor. It is a specialty, a great, momentous occasion to play in the Rose Bowl. So let it be a standalone. I can understand the bowl games coming in, Fiesta Bowl, Peach Bowl, Sugar Bowl, everything that we saw in the semis, the quarterfinals, and then, the final game is the national championship. I would like to see home games all the way through the conference, the semifinals like we see in the NFL, but there's too much money in the bowl games, and we know. Excuse me, had to take a sip of liquid death. We know that can't happen. We absolutely know that can't happen. But I want y'all to get in the chat, get in the comments on YouTube, on Facebook, Rumble, LinkedIn, wherever you find this video. Let me know your overall thoughts on the first ever 12-team playoff format. What changes would you possibly make? And what were your takeaways on the national championship game? Because it was a great one to watch. It absolutely was. From snap to snap, I was glued.
Hey, it's AJL here. Appreciate you sticking to the end of the video here on YouTube. You could have chose any other show, but you chose my video, and for that, I'm very grateful. If you haven't already, please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Follow me on social media. Hit the bell on the channel so you never miss a post. Check me out on all social media platforms. Right here, you'll find a chance to subscribe to the show, a related video, and a playlist. See you guys in the next one.